Welcome on into the Utah Blockcast. I'm Steve Bartle, Utah Insider for KSL Sports. Appreciate everybody for supporting the Blockcast. It's been a lot of fun for last month, and it's good to be back. So, obviously, this episode going to be very recruiting heavy. It was a very productive weekend of recruiting for Utah football. They've secured 3 commitments overall, and 2 from this final group of official visitors, and that which puts a cap on official visit season for college football as many welcome their final group of visitors. So more good news expected to come from this group, which is really exciting when you consider who has already committed and who's left on the board from that group. So I'll dive into what I gathered, what I heard, all of that from over the weekend, and that'll be what this episode will largely center on. So excited about that. And, I talked about it on the last episode, but the summer cold thing that I was dealing with turned out to be something a little bit worse. Nothing crazy, but had to go and get a breathing treatment, given a dose of steroids. And now I have a sweet little inhaler. So feeling better, feeling much better even. But I apologize in advance for any cough interruptions while recording. So did actually record an episode prior to the weekend with Brandon Huffman, my guy from 24/7 Sports, the national recruiting editor there. And he joined me for about 10, 12 minutes and went in depth on a handful of Utah's top targets remaining on the board. And if you haven't watched it or listened to it, I posted a link on Twitter and I think I posted it elsewhere, but I can go back and do that as well. But strongly recommend going back, even now that we've had the weekend in the rearview mirror. I think Huffman shared a lot of good insights on where Utah stands with a lot of their top targets on the board. Guys like Celesi Moa, Kelvin Obot. We went into Felix Ojo and the Pula twins and that. And so definitely worth your time to listen to Huffman there. Before diving into the recruiting updates, just a quick reminder that, Utah basketball is going to be dropping a behind the scenes style episode today, where we get a peek behind the curtains over the last couple months inside the program as Alex Jensen has gotten off to his start leading the program. And so really excited to see what that looks like. They dropped a little teaser, over the weekend. And so interested to see what that looks like. And I'll have a takeaways recap at KSL Sports up shortly after that video, which will be exciting. And it's a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of excitement about Utah basketball. That excitement is genuinely returning for the program. And, it's good to capitalize on that with, as much content as you can put out there. I think that'll be a lot of fun. And also, big shout out to our guy, NBA champion Brandon Carlson. What a year for him. Couldn't be happier for the guy, to experience that in his first year in the NBA. The path that he had to take to end up where he did at Oklahoma City, just super cool for him and all that. So with all that out of the way, let's dive into the weekend. So Utah hosted a total of 9 visitors. And, a couple of those guys were kept quiet going into the weekend, as quiet as they can be. I think, a couple of them have tweeted about their visit plans, but for the most part, it was kept pretty quiet and on the down low. And yet, Utah welcomed still a pretty big list of visitors. So 9 guys in total were in Salt Lake City, were on campus this weekend. And, the buzz has been really, really positive. Just in general, I've heard that Utah's in a good spot to land potentially 6 or more commitments. And, I think that's super exciting. Again, considering what we've seen so far with 2 commitments and who else was in attendance this weekend for Utah football. But, this coaching staff deserves a lot of credit. And, there's been a lot of talk about the new faces, Jason Beck, Micah Simon, and Mark Atuaya, and the impact that they've had. And I do think that's played a role here. And bringing a new energy and all that sort of stuff. But the rest of the staff deserves a ton of credit for just maintaining, a high energy level, maintaining their vision on the future and what they're doing and what they're building. As Coach Whittingham always talks about, a consistency and staying committed to the process, and that's evident in recruiting as well. And I think that's shown up here. And so Utah's staff welcomed in 9 guys, like I mentioned, and so let's start with the 2 visitors that announced their commitments over the weekend. The first one was Perion Williams, wide receiver out of Archbishop Riordan in San Francisco, California. He's an 87 rated 3-star prospect, number 75 athlete according to 24/7 Sports. And he's committing to Utah as a wide receiver. And when you pop on the tape, it's easy to see why, given his athleticism and dynamic playmaking ability, at all 3 levels. I think he is a great fit in Jason Beck's offense and what they like to do with guys in the slot and having those versatile playmakers that can, make plays with the ball in their hands. They can get vertical. They can create separations in their short and intermediate routes. And I think you see that natural athleticism and the ability to do that in Williams pretty easily. Now, obviously, he's going to have to refine his technique and hone in his footwork and all that sort of stuff. But to start the weekend with a receiver commitment, I think was pretty significant for Micah Simon and this Utah staff to land him. So he announced his commitment Saturday night, and to get the weekend going, and that was he was one that for the longest time Utah's been viewed as the favorite. So to see it all the way through to the finish line, holding off programs like Minnesota, Oregon State, and Washington State, I think is obviously, again, a big win for Coach Simon and that Utah receiver room. The next guy, see, cough number 1. At least that's what, that's 7 minutes into the episode. First cough. That's not bad. I'll take that. Next commitment, Rowdy Pierce. Man, Rowdy Pierce. What a name. So, 86 graded 3-star, the number 94 interior offensive lineman, according to 24/7 Sports. He's currently playing offensive tackle for his Midland Christian High School squad. And, at 6'3", 285 pounds, this is a guy that also participates in shot put and discus. And not only, participates, he's a Texas State champion in both of those regards. So really good athlete, multi-sport athlete. And you see the ability to, generate power and torque in his, in his game and how that translates. And, having that track background, that was a big thing for, a guy like Braden Daniels, who, was a similar offensive lineman prospect back in 2018. He was a lower rated kid he had like an 82 or 83 3-star rating. So, Rowdy Pierce comes in a little bit higher than that. But I think those two are fairly similar. Another guy that he probably compares to, has shades of, is Alex Harrison. And so, Pierce has committed to Utah as a center, which sort of minimizes those weaknesses, of him playing tackle currently at this level. He's not going to be a tackle at the collegiate level, given that size. But I think moving him inside to center, I think, is going to really enhance, his outlook and, really fits well in that role. So, he committed to Utah Saturday night, committed to the coaches Saturday night, and this was another one where Utah was the perceived favorite since the moment they offered back in early May. So to get those two on board, pretty significant. And now we can transition into some of the updates on the guys that I think everybody is interested in, and it starts there with the number 1 offensive tackle in the country, Felix Ojo. And he said as much this morning, tweeting out that he's headed to the Rivals camp to make him to compete for the unanimous title of number 1 offensive tackle. And you love to see that sort of competitiveness, a guy that's willing to go out and compete. That's always key when you're talking about these top prospects, these guys, because it means something to them. football it's transitioned to more of a business with all the money involved and guys looking to protect themselves. You'd love to see guys that just go out and compete and love the game. And so that was really cool to see that from Ojo this morning. And it was more cool going back to last week when it was revealed that he was going to take his last official visit to Utah this weekend. He originally had Oklahoma scheduled for the visit, but opted to cancel that and fly out to Salt Lake City. And I think the big thing for that, big driver for that, were actually the relationships that he has with guys on the team. And he plays for Lake Ridge High School in Mansfield, Texas, which is the home to a number of guys that have recently joined the program. Nathan Tillman, Dylan Battle, Racing Guillory, those are all guys that hail from that Mansfield area, and all have connections to Ojo. So obviously, Racing Guillory is probably the most prominent name that you think of because of how vocal he's been on Twitter with Ojo, and I think that's super exciting. But to get him on campus, this is something that Brandon Huffman talked about on our on the last episode. With all the changes to the transfer to the high school recruiting stuff and the calendar and the influx of NIL, Huffman made the point that we're still in an era, still in a time, when that last visit is a very crucial visit. It still holds a lot of value. Maybe not as much as it used to, but it still holds a lot of value. And so, Utah getting that last opportunity to make their pitch, to bring their absolute best, for Ojo that weekend. I think the buzz has been very positive around him. Utah obviously faces a major battle with Texas, who was considered the favorite to land him coming into the visit, the unanimous favorite, like overwhelming favorite. But I do think Utah's done quite a bit of good here. I think this was a very productive weekend for Utah with Ojo, and just sort of based on what I've gathered, it seems like Utah feels like the experience this weekend has sort of motivated them to continue this pursuit of Ojo. And that's really encouraging, right? Sometimes these guys come out and it's just a visit for fun, to take a trip, but the family was enjoying themselves. Ojo was enjoying himself, and I think it was a really productive weekend for Utah with Ojo. So obviously, this is going to be very competitive. Texas has told him that he's the number one target on their board, regardless of position. He's extremely talented, has an extremely promising outlook. He's a guy that can come in and play from day one and be a fairly impactful player. So this isn't going to be easy, but Utah feels, just based on what I've gathered, Utah feels pretty motivated to continue there on this run for Ojo. So that's super exciting. Some are a little bit more bold and have put in a prediction for Utah to land Ojo. I'm not ready for that just yet, but I do want to emphasize that this was a really, really good weekend for Utah and Ojo. Coach Harding, Isaac Asiata, the entire offensive line unit did a fantastic job of creating that family atmosphere, of making Ojo feel wanted, and I think that's been a huge thing. And obviously, with Spencer Fano, Caleb Lomu, that seeing those headlines, Utah has 2 potential first-round draft picks. This was another thing that Huffman mentioned and something that we've talked about with other targets, but that's a big deal because not only are prospects seeing the development of those players, they're seeing opportunity. 2 guys leave for the NFL as first-round draft picks. There's an opportunity now to step into that same role, potentially follow that same developmental plan. And I think that's been the big key for Utah in making this push for Ojo and also Kelvin Obot. So pretty exciting stuff there. All right, let's transition to the surprise visitors of the weekend. It was revealed midweek that the Pula twins were going to be visiting Utah this weekend, and uh, there was a lot of encouraging buzz around the Pula twins and Utah's chances with them to potentially flip them from their UCLA commitment, and things continue to be trending positively in that direction. So obviously these are two dynamic playmakers, Jaron and Kenan Pula, who are going to be playing for Lone Peak High School this season, are just two dynamic athletes. They have the size at 6'2", 6'3" plus. They've got the athleticism and the ball skills to be really dynamic, potentially even instant impact receivers at the next level. I think obviously fit and all that and opportunity is going to be key to that. And I think Micah Simon can certainly, provide or at least paint a picture of a pretty clear path to opportunities in year one for these guys. And I think that'll be big for Utah's pitch with them. These are really worth the effort in their pursuit. Jaron Pula is the slightly higher rated prospect. He's got a 90 graded 4-star rating. He checks in as the number 241 overall prospect and the number 35 receiver. Kenan Pula is kind of a interesting two-way potential type where he could play receiver, he could play safety maybe. He's got an 89 3-star rating and checks in as the number 63 receiver. Both of those according to 24/7 Sports. So again, very similar skill sets in terms of their physical qualities, athletic qualities, and skill sets. But it's interesting that Jaron is more of the receiver and Kenan is more of the two-way potential. So this has been a big focus for Utah. It's been a quiet, ninja-like approach over the last month with these guys, and I think Utah's trending positively for both of them. Now, the big one for me, this is a guy that I absolutely love, Asa Nyalier out of Timpview High School. He is one of the top defensive backs in the region. Super productive last season for Timpview. He tallied 82 tackles, 11 for loss, while notching 6 interceptions, 7 pass deflections, 2 forced fumble, and 1 recovery. When you talk about Morgan Scally and his RSNB culture, Nyalier is ball hawking extraordinaire right now. He's got all the ball hawking production that Scally covets. And so, this has been a key target for Scally and the Utes this entire time. And I think, Scally has done a good job of, this has been a long-term play. Playing at Timpview, Scally's developed a really strong relationship with him. And, having Mark Atuai, who has connections to the family, also helps too. But Nyalier has seen his recruitment boiled down. He's got a really impressive offer list. Miami, Oregon, I think Michigan State, a handful of other, Big Ten, SEC type offers on that sheet. But this is boiled down to BYU, UCLA, and Utah. And with Utah getting the final visit, that was pretty significant. There was optimism that Utah was in a position to strike, and it seems Utah has capitalized on that this weekend. 24/7 Sports recruiting analyst, one of the best in the game, Blair Angulo, has put in a crystal ball prediction for Utah with Nyalier, and I think that's huge. So this is a big one for Utah. He was a big time target, and he brings potentially we see some news there coming soon. So really excited about that. He is fantastic, truly fantastic. It would be a big pickup for the Utes, especially to get that in-state presence going. Next up, Dylan Waters, another defensive back out of Fort Bend Marshall, which is a really big program in Texas. Constantly produces D1 level talent. And Waters looks to be another one, in the defensive secondary that will be making the move to the next level. So, and what's impressive about Waters, he's kind of a late bloomer. He only played in 8 games last season, getting an opportunity, and he made the most of it. He ended his junior season with 20 tackles and 4 pass breakups while providing some really impressive moments in coverage, right? And so, when you think of Utah, they know what they're looking for in the defensive secondary, and Waters has a lot of the qualities that they like. He's got good size at 6'1", 6'2". He's got good length, plays with good physicality, both in coverage. You really see it in press coverage. But man, he's willing to come up to the line of scrimmage. He's willing to take on blocks. He's willing to tackle. And that is what Utah loves in a cornerback. So, he's earned an initial 3-star 86 rating from 24/7 Sports and checks in as the number 98 cornerback. But I think this is a guy, like I said, a late bloomer of sorts, a guy that just popped up on the scene. I think he's a kid that, as we get into his senior season and he gets more reps, he gets more time on the field, that his recruiting profile continues to improve. So, there's a good amount of buzz that the Utes are in a very favorable spot for him, following this weekend. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if we see something soon from Waters. One of the quieter visitors that didn't get a lot of buzz, but probably should have, Josiah Jefferson, a JUCO tight end out of Southwestern College in California. Utah welcomed him to campus this weekend, which was great because I know Dalton Kincaid was around in Salt Lake City this weekend. So, I'm sure that the two linked up, and I think, their games are very similar. Jefferson is 6'5", 230-pound pass catcher with good all-around qualities for the tight end position. And, the things that I heard about Jefferson actually centered more about, the type of person that he was and how he presented himself on the visit. Was very thoughtful, very mindful, and very appreciative of everything. Somebody told me that he folded the clothes after their photo shoot, which is something that recruits rarely do. And it was just something that caught a few people by surprise. And, it's little things like that I think, draw that extra attention and appreciation. So pretty cool stuff there. With him, he's got a recruitment that, he's earned offers from Arizona, Boise State, Cal, Maryland, and Oklahoma. I think Arizona and Oklahoma are the biggest competition for Jefferson right now. Utah was the second program to offer him. I think, there are some family ties to the Oklahoma program. He is the younger brother of Tony Jefferson, the safety that has played a number of years in the NFL and comes from Oklahoma. He was on an official visit to Norman, Oklahoma last week. So I think, there's going to be some tough family ties to overcome, but I think the Utes made a very good impression with Jefferson. And I think he, again, like I said, a fantastic tight end prospect and, has a lot of qualities that I think would be really exciting to add to that mix. And then lastly, the biggest mystery visitor, both physically, both literally and figuratively, the Utes welcomed in Javion Raymond, an edge defensive lineman out of Lubbock, Texas. The Utes identified Raymond as a rather intriguing defensive line prospect. He's not currently rated or ranked by any service, at least that from what I could see, but he's earned offers from Baylor, UTEP, and Utah. And I think more importantly is once you dive into the profile, his own profile, is his qualities, his tape, you really see why Utah has made him a big focal point of their recruiting efforts over the last 2 months. He's 6'6", 250 pounds with the frame to add quite a bit of mass and still preserve, his disruptive athleticism. He posted a collection of photos, one of which included a photo of him posing next to Luther Ellis. And we all know how big Luther is. And, Raymond just was right there with him in terms of size. Like, I can't get over how big he is. Again, 6'6", 250 pounds. And I've exchanged some text messages with Raymond. And I know that Utah was the favorite coming into the weekend. And I think this is trending towards a positive conclusion for Luther Ellis and the Utes. And, in talking with Raymond, I love his mindset. I love his mindset. He's not bothered at all that, he's not on the recruiting services radars, that he's not rated, that he's not bothered by any of that. He just wants to get into a college program and get to work. He's excited to put on the weight. He's excited to play defensive line. He wants to play defensive line. He loves playing in the trenches. He's just that type that I think is going to do really well at a place like Utah. So we'll see something there. I wouldn't be surprised if we see something soon. But all in all, it was a very productive weekend for Utah on the recruiting trail, and there will be plenty more news to come, in the coming days, which is exciting. Hopefully, I continue to get better, and we can do some more of these video breakdowns. That's going to be the next big thing. Is now that we've gotten through the official visit season, we'll do some more individual recaps and breakdowns. I'll have some of the recruits on with me to help break some things down as well. And we'll give you guys an opportunity to hear from them. So really exciting stuff. I think Utah's, on the verge of, landing a few more, and they're trending positively for, a number of their top targets. So I know there's been a lot of worry and concern and even frustrations over Utah's recruiting over the last month. But I think, hold tight. Utah knows what they're doing, and let's see this thing through with this staff. So appreciate everybody. I should be back later this week with another episode. I'll be up actually at Britton Covey's golf tournament, so I should have some content from that as well and some things to share from that. So should be exciting. Again, appreciate everybody for tuning in, watching on YouTube, whatever you do. Appreciate y'all. This is me, Steve Bartle, and the Utah Blockcast, signing off.